if you're like many of my clients or the students I've taught over the years, you're confused about nutrition, especially carbohydrates. Over the years, I've gotten questions like, are bananas fattening? Should I not be eating them? Or carrots, do they have too much sugar? Should I not eat carrots? Or are carbs bad overall? Should I not be eating carbs? I know there's a lot of confusion when it comes to nutrition, especially carbohydrates. So I'm on a quest to help people understand that carbs are not bad, just misunderstood. And we need to know some things about them. And specifically in this video, I'm going to be talking about something that you might not have thought about, but it is the volume of water that food contains. And that's what makes a difference. Stay tuned. Hey there, I'm Neely with Neely on Nutrition, registered dietitian nutritionist and a certified health coach. In this video, I'm going to explain something very important about carbs. They are not bad or fattening, but the volume of water they contain is important, and that's what we're going to dive into. Because carbs are so confusing, I created a free 19-page guide called The Truth About Carbs, and you can pick that up in the link in the description. Let's talk a moment about macros. You've probably heard of the macros. So the macros are carbohydrate, protein, and fat. So all foods that we eat have varying amounts of those three nutrients, carbs, protein, and fat. Food we eat also has a varying amount of water, and that's what we're going to focus on. Now, if you like to eat a volume of food like I do, then you really want to pay attention to this, because you can get a lot of food for the foods that have a lot of water in them, okay? Maybe you heard that carbs are fattening, especially the starchy carbs like bread and pasta and rice and whole grains and potatoes and so forth. Well, starchy foods actually are not more fattening. Most of them are very low in fat, but what makes a difference is the volume of water. That's what makes a difference. So they're more concentrated in carbohydrates because they have less water, and therefore they're higher in calories. Here's the deal. The higher the water volume of a food, the more you can eat ounce per ounce, and the lower the carbohydrate and calorie count is. Now, I created this percentage of water chart to help explain this concept. And you can get this and lots more information in my free guide. Now, some carbs are higher in calories than others, and that's why it's important to take a look at this. So as you can see, there's this listing of percentage of water, and everything is on a continuum as far as how much water the foods have. Now, water, of course, is 100% water, but then down to 0%, we have sugar has just a trace amount, but oil has no water in it whatsoever. Now, I focus specifically on this list on the carbohydrates because that's what we've been talking about, and there's a lot of confusion. Oil is not a carbohydrate. I just want to put that out there, but I put it here just so you could see that it has absolutely no water in there. That's why it's so concentrated in calories. Everything else, though, is a percentage and a continuum. Now, notice that most non-starchy veggies are at least 90% water. Many are 95% water. What that means is you can eat a boatload of cucumbers and celery and tomatoes and other veggies for very, very few calories and very few carbs. At the opposite end, though, are foods that have very little water, like nuts and nut butters, as well as crackers and cereals. I wrote a blog post how easy it is to overeat good for you foods, and I'll put a link in the description. But what I want to really focus on, is the difference between non-starchy veggies and starchier carbs. When we talk about how great veggies are for us, a rainbow of color gives us loads of nutrition. Most of them are 90 to 96% water. So the volume you can have in comparison to the more starchy type foods is pretty significant. And when we're talking about veggies, we're talking about non-starchy veggies. We're talking about asparagus and broccoli, cauliflower, tomatoes, cabbage, spinach, zucchini. I encourage you to watch a previous video where I broke down the 5 main classes of carbohydrates, the main sources of carbohydrates. So you can have a pretty large amount of those veggies because the volume of water is so high. Now, let's pause for a moment and discuss fruit and the concept of why people might think that bananas are more fattening. Let's take a look at fruit. Most fruit, as you can see, is 80 to 90% water. Apples, oranges, kiwi, grapes. Watermelon is a little bit higher. It's loaded with water. But banana, look where banana falls. Banana is about 75% water. So it's not that it's more fattening, it's just more concentrated in calories and carbs. It doesn't have as much water, so the volume is not as great as compared to some of the other things, like watermelon, which is 91% water. So you can get a much higher volume of watermelon, 2 1/8 cups, or strawberries, 2 cups of strawberries, versus something like a banana, which would be just a smaller portion. I also want to point out carrots. I've been asked many times over the years, Neely, should I not eat carrots because I've heard that they're really high in sugar? Well, here's the thing. Yes, they're sugar, but all carbohydrates are sugar. Sugar molecules or glucose molecules. The difference, though, is the amount of water in carrots, as well as Brussels sprouts and kale and winter squash. They just don't have as much water as some of the other non-starchy veggies. Back to the starchier carbs. So between 70 and 80%, we have peas and corn, potato and quinoa, and other whole grains as well. So they're more concentrated in carbohydrates and therefore, of course, calories. They just don't have as much water. Pasta is a little bit lower in water at about 60 to 70%, as well as rice and legumes, or your dried beans, red beans, black beans, kidney beans, etc. And then even further down the list, we've got bread, bagel, rolls, buns, flour tortillas are about 35% water. Then we've got sweets in the 20 to 30% water category. We're talking donuts and cakes and biscuits and so forth. We also have honey and dried fruits as well. Below 10%, this is where we have cookies and brownies, cereals, crackers, granola bars, and snack foods like chips and so forth. We also have nuts, seeds, nut butter like peanut butter and almond butter. They're very concentrated in calories and have very little water in them. So there you have it, a little representation of how much water is in the foods we eat, specifically the carbohydrates, and how we can get away with eating a lot more of some foods and not so much of other ones, especially if we're trying to manage our weight. We really want to focus on those non-starchy vegetables, half of your plate, non-starchy veggies. Maybe you love your starchy carbs and you don't want to give them up. Well, you don't have to. A simple balance shift of your plate due to the quantity would definitely help. Instead of half of your plate starchy carbs, shift to half of your plate non-starchy carbs, non-starchy veggies. Overeating carbs, portions do need to be taken into consideration, but any of the macronutrients, whether it's fat, protein, or carbohydrate, they all can be overconsumed. But we have a tendency to blame it on the carb because it's so abundant in our food supply. Please, there's no need to throw out those carbs, but focus on the high volume water carbohydrates like those non-starchy vegetables, especially if you enjoy eating a volume of food like I do. You can get a lot of bang for your buck by eating those higher water foods. Don't forget to get my free guide, The Truth About Carbs. The link is in the description. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. I'd greatly appreciate it, as well as hitting the red subscribe button and the bell icon so you can get notified of my future videos. Thanks for watching Neely on Nutrition, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.